Welcome to Muddy River News this week, furnished by Harvey's. I'm Bob Goff. Macy Ferguson Smith works with diversity, equity, and inclusion at Quincy Medical Group, which is an important job. But she's got another really cool job that we're going to talk about today. She was recently selected as a leader with in the Leaders Program with the Obama Foundation, and she's my guest. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
That sounds really cool.
It sounds super official, and it is really cool. It's been fun so far, thus far.
So, let's first off, how did you become familiar with the program, and why did you make the decision to apply?
Okay, so this is actually a really interesting story.
Well, good, because it was boring. I would want to hear.
Right, like Barack Obama gave an interview to Trevor Noah. The Daily Show was ending, all that last fall, and he started talking about when he campaigned in this area in Southern Illinois. Right. For state senator for Illinois. And he talked about how he was able to come down here. He did not say Quincy specifically, so I can't know for sure if he was talking about our town, but he talked about coming into towns that had like a 70% Republican, 30% split, right? And being able to come into shops and talk to people, and they would have conversations, and he would go and talk to editors, and he did not name the publication, but I have thoughts that, like, was he talking about the Herald Whig? Because the way that he describes
it wasn't
the
us.
area,
we weren't here then.
Yeah, y'all weren't here yet. Otherwise, it would have been y'all. But like he talks about how he was able to have conversations. There was dialogue. It wasn't so difficult to have regular conversations about civic democracy. It just wasn't that, and people were able to listen to him and say he might be a little liberal for our taste, but we have commonalities. And then it struck me as odd because then he started talking about the shift, after so many years after he left office and 45 came in, that there was just this hard, thick barrier all of a sudden, and that he didn't think that he could probably go in those areas still and have those same conversations with folks. And then he introduced the Leaders Program, and only because of that personal anecdote that he gave, I thought, well, it sounded like he was talking about Quincy. I might have a real chance if I apply for this program, and it just so happened, I don't know if that's the reason why or not, but I wrote about it in my application, that's how I found out about this program, and that I wanted to participate. I really did.
I first met him when he was campaigning for U.S. Senate. Our state senator at the time, John Sullivan, who is a Democrat, back when a Democrat could get elected in this area, right. Which was not that long ago, honestly. But like you said, it seems to be a different world. Yeah. And I met him at the Maid Rite. Yes,
he was everywhere.
Yeah.
And I don't remember all the way. I do have a picture with him, but it was well over 15 years ago when we were sandbagging, I think.
Then he came to sandbagging.
Exactly.
Yes. There were 3 times I remember when he was here when I got to actually, twice had a conversation with him. The other time he was already president, and I was back in the media section. We were all walled off. But it was the Maid Rite when he was campaigning for U.S. Senate and John Sullivan was taking him on the tours. Then it was the sandbagging. Then it was when he came here and gave a speech when he was actually president. Yeah. And that's when, we kind of, there were some protests or whatever. Right. And there's going to be protests regardless
up.
of
2010, I think, so around there, absolutely.
Exactly. So what is the Leaders Program? What does that entail?
So it's a 6-month non-residential fellowship, so I don't have to move. I can stay in Quincy, keep being a therapist, keep doing the work in the community. But it really follows 44s, and that's what I call them in my house. It's weird to say President Barack Obama, so we give numbers.
Yeah.
And so he believes in value-based leadership, community building, and while there might be a diversity, equity, inclusion focus, it's really about social justice, which we know that has a coined term of its own now in social justice warriors, but it's not that. It's really about building back your community. And I have been a person that when I run into folks from like high school or college, they're like, oh, you're still in Quincy? Like, why are you still there? And for me, this is my hometown. Yeah. I don't want to have to leave my hometown to seek the city life or, those types of things. Like, I'm from the cornfields. I might have been born in St. Louis, but I am from and of the cornfields. So I believe that my hometown should also be representative of me. And part of the work that I do is helping that along. I want Quincy to be a place where everyone can come here, find a house, build a life, have a family, and I grew up in a Quincy that was that way, and I would like to bring that back to this area.
And you're doing that yourself. I mean,
Trying.
you got a wife.
You're
doing the
family planning. Like
Yeah.
we're out here, and it was really intentional to be back in Quincy, and even where we live. I grew up on the northwestern side of town. Played basketball at Berry Ann, all the things. Learned to ride a bike in the alley behind my mom and dad's apartment, and we're back on the north side because it feels like home. Still visit my mom on the south side all the time, but being back in the community is a really important piece of building back the community.
Sure, it is. No
Very
question
much
about
so.
it. But you're probably going to get to go to Chicago at least once on this trip, aren't you, for this gig?
There's an in-person convening.
Good.
Yes, I think it's like the very last day of October into that first week in November. We will be in Chicago. Yes, I think we might get to meet him. I hope I don't faint. But I look forward to it. I look forward to seeing how he is able to pour into us as a cohort, for sure.
And we had touched, you've started touching on this already. And again, your role with Quincy Medical Group, and I know I've spoken to Carol and the folks there. They're proud as heck of you, and I think everybody in town should be proud as heck of you.
Thank you so much.
This is a really cool thing. But again, when you are, you grew up here, and like you said, we're a community that is 5% African American, maybe
something like that. Yeah.
So again, you trying to do this work and bring this here, and it's also part of your day job as well.
Absolutely.
So, and you're also active in the community. You've been on the Human Rights Commission as chair, and you've been on it. How do you get that word out? How do you tell people this is important? Because we get all this stuff from the national media, and then we get the stuff from the local people, not media per se, but the local people who want to put it through a different lens, if you will.
Yeah.
How do we just say, look, all we want to do is everybody have the same shot at everything. That's all we want. So how do you do that?
For me, it's about relationship building and person to person. Nothing would be possible at Quincy Medical Group if people didn't first listen to me, take me seriously, and then say, oh, okay, we want to do this. We want to come alongside you. That took almost a year and a half of talking. And I'm a therapist. I talk for a living, so that's okay too. But it was so intentional in what are we missing? What can we do? How do we do it? And the roadmap is going to be different for each organization, each person. But if we don't have that person-to-person connection, I don't know how people will evolve or be able to think differently. Because for me, and this is something that President Obama said as well in the interview with Trevor Noah, is that when you are at the grassroots level, it is so much more difficult to stereotype. Because if I am alongside someone that may not have the same political beliefs, or they may not have been raised the same way, but we're alongside each other working in this community, it's going to be really difficult for them to say, yeah, black gay folks or black queer or black folks like Macy, because I'm right there with them. They have to see me and I see them as a human, and then we have a conversation. And it's an ongoing conversation. Like, it doesn't really end, but we all learn.
We've had, I've been in the news business a long time, and I've seen how, the internet has evolved, and Muddy River News has been around for a couple of years now. And social media is a very important aspect of us getting our word out, and that's how people interact with us and come through us.
Right.
But it's so easy when you sit, and I've this is something I've learned and something that I've changed about myself over the years. You're not there. You're not. If you're on the other side of town you're at your phone and I got my phone, it's easy for us to just call each other names and be mean to each other. But we're not going to be mean to each other if we disagree and we're sitting next to each other. We're going to have that civil conversation. And I think my biggest pet peeve, I think all social media, you should have to put your name, your face, whatever on there. You can't. I mean, I'm sorry. There's some guy on Twitter who calls himself Cat Turd and thinks the former President Obama is the best thing from sliced bread. It's like, I'm not going to take my advice on life from a dude who calls himself Cat Turd. Or a woman who calls himself. I don't know who Cat Turd is. I don't care who Cat Turd is. Because if it's Fred Smith and he's like this, okay, Fred Smith and I can at least have a conversation about it. But Fred Smith and I can also sit down and have that conversation. And it's just so much more effective to do that. And I think that has been a big part of the problem.
Absolutely.
Where people just get behind and just flame away. And again, I am, obviously being a journalist, going to Mizzou, I'm a First Amendment advocate.
Right.
You have the right to do whatever.
Right.
But it's getting to a point where I'm like,
it is.
Come on.
It is.
Can you just be a little nicer?
Right.
I mean, we report bad things about people all the time,
Sure.
but we don't generally say, oh yeah, that person's also a piece of shit or whatever. We don't do that. I mean,
right.
How can we get back to that? How can we get back to the civil conversation where two people can sit down over a coffee or a beer or whatever your drink of choice is and they disagree, but it's like, hey, we probably agree on more than we disagree.
Absolutely.
How do we do that?
Because for one, I'm a God-fearing person. I went to school here. I graduated from QHS. I went to Culver. I have commonalities with a lot of folks in this area, but sometimes they can only see, as far as what's in front of them, they see, maybe the locks, the way that I'm dressed, things that I've said or what I've represented in other spaces. And
wearing a polo shirt.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I think that Tommy Hilfiger and Polo have been very kind to me, but I don't know. But for others, they have to see me as human first. We have to be able to see each other as human, and then once we move from that human condition, what are the things that are making us all unhealthy? Because DEI and health equity, we're all in this together. In order to get healthier as a community, we must be able to talk to one another and understand that I think we all have the same goals of growing Quincy, right? Building it back up, I think we dipped under 40,000 or something with the census, and so we're trying to grow that too. I want that as well. That sounds like a commonality. How we get there has to be more collaboration community-wide. Everyone is struggling to hire folks. Everyone is struggling to keep people employed. Retention is an issue. In every community meeting that I attend, these are the issues that are being discussed. And in the back of my head, I'm like, where is the community recruitment and retention plan? Because to have all of us siloed trying to do these things when we all want, again, I think we all want the same thing. Where's the collaboration? I get that there's competition and this and that. And we still need people here. We need butts and seats. We need people to fill these jobs. And how do we do that without collaboration and understanding that Macy Ferguson Smith might bring something a little extra to the table, or Gabby Schulte, my wife, might bring something a little extra to the table sometimes when we're having these recruitment, retention, or whatever community conversations we're having because of the lived experience. My wife and I, we grew up in very different settings, and we found commonalities. Also, we love each other, and we decided to marry. That's a beautiful thing, right? I think that there are a lot of things like that are beautiful that could help this community thrive. But we have to be able to have conversations with each other and stop doing this left, right, moderate. I want people in Quincy to be happy and to be healthy, and I really hope others want that too. Yeah,
I just don't think, I never want it to get to a point where, someone's, and again, we all have friends. Everybody should have. We all have friends all across the spectrum.
Right.
You shouldn't get into a thing where, oh, that person believes this, so and it goes both ways. This person believes this, that person believes that. And you've been friends for 20 years, and friendships and families sometimes dissolve because of stuff like that.
And again, being able to talk. What is that? When we're not able to talk anymore, and it's so cut and dry, and people that we used to love, right? I've had people in my office where they have these conversations with family members, and it is gut-wrenching for them because it is like you are rejecting everything about who I am, and how do I deal with that? When you say things about certain populations, or even populations that I serve, I would struggle with that, but want to understand why that person thinks opposite from me, because often it's rooted in misconceptions and things that we don't actually know, stereotypes, things like that.
And I would, you always think it's going to take some big deal, some national tragedy to bring us all together. But obviously with COVID, that didn't work.
Well, I think the last time, and just had a conversation about this a couple of days ago, the last time I remember camaraderie amongst the nation, 9/11.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the last time.
I was just getting ready to say that same thing. That was, yeah.
And what a beautiful thing at that time to respond. September 12th, I think it was either that night or that morning, my family, there was a thing at City Hall, somebody fact checked me, I'm not exactly sure when, but I remember going. I remember people praying, crying, singing, and we stayed in that space for a long time.
We did.
That was awesome.
Now maybe some of the stuff that happened afterwards, and like, hey, let's bomb these guys and not these guys. Maybe that was a problem. But at least for that moment, we had that. COVID, we had that moment for like 6 seconds.
If that. And shout out to every healthcare professional that is still in the field. We see
and the bar owners who couldn't have people in, and the restaurants. Yeah, the whole thing was just.
The
and
community.
Again, you look back on it. Was it an overreaction? Was it not? But it's like when you're trying to deal with this could kill you. You err on the side of caution.
Right.
I would think.
We would hope.
Yeah. So I think the thing I said is, okay, maybe the alien invasion, maybe like Independence Day, maybe Will Smith and Bill Pullman will all get there and we'll all come together, and maybe that's what's going to take.
But
we'll probably have 2 people who will say, independent. They'll say, oh no, those aliens are liberals or they're conservatives or whatever, so we don't like them.
They said it in the hearings. We have evidence. We have everything, and prior to COVID, I think that actually would have gone viral. I really do. I don't know what's happened in this echo chamber since
we're all swallowed up in. I mean, it's always election season. There's no off switch.
Right.
It's always once the day after one election ends, the next one begins.
It's so interesting,
the issue.
that political cycle, and that's changed. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be, well, okay, there's the election. Everybody go home and wrap up and try harder next time. And you're right. The very next day, it's like, okay, so in 2 years for that midterm election.
Yeah. How can we neutralize this guy so he can't get anything done?
Absolutely.
And it's like, that's really not what we should do.
Like, that's not fun.
We just got him in. Let's get some stuff done, one way or the other. So, well, you've been an absolute joy to talk to.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank you for stopping by. We're gonna have you on again because I want to hear like a midway progress report on how this is going.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And then also the next time on, we're gonna talk about some ball.
Basketball. We have to talk about local basketball. That is my thing. Love basketball, love sports.
So we'll do that. That will be a preseason. We'll have a preseason visit then. How about that?
Sounds good.
All right. Macy, thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
All right. That's all the time we have for now. Thanks for watching.